Hey there, and welcome to the Girl Means Business podcast, the show where we're all about helping you feel confident both as a mom and a business owner. I'm your host, Kendra Swalls, mom of two, former teacher, and full-time photographer and business coach. Each week, we'll discuss the challenges, success, and secrets that make you say, I can do this, because you absolutely can. So pop in those earbuds, grab your favorite snack, and let's dive in because this girl means business. Hey there, and welcome to the Girl Means Business podcast. You are in store for an absolute amazing episode this week because it is guest interview week, and we have an amazing guest. So today I am chatting with Ludovica Colella. She is a transformation coach for millennial women. She helps women to be more confident, to step into kind of the role of who they are as a woman, as a leader, as just someone who deserves to kind of be in the seat that they're in. And when I first came across her, I read an article that she contributed to about imposter syndrome. And what really stood out to me was that not only did she discuss imposter syndrome in a way that was really powerful, but she broke down very specifically the different reasons behind imposter syndrome. Because a lot of times I think that we look at imposter syndrome as like this kind of overarching umbrella of like, oh yeah, I have imposter syndrome. I don't think I'm good enough to do what I'm doing. And she really broke it down into like more of the underlying causes behind imposter syndrome. And so being able to look at it and go, what is the actual root cause of why I feel like I'm not capable or not good enough to be doing what I'm doing? And then how can I address that specific underlying cause? And so whenever I reached out about having her on the show and we started talking, I was like, I really would love for you to break this down for my audience because I think it's so powerful. So that is what she's doing today in our conversation. We're going to really get into the nitty-gritty of what is behind the imposter syndrome. How can you identify where you fall on the scale of like, what's the underlying cause? Can you overlap some of those underlying causes? We get into all of that. And so I'm really excited for you to not only dive into that, but you're going to fall in love with Ludovica just as much as I did. I cannot say enough high things about her. She's awesome. So without further ado, let's get to our conversation. All right. Hello. Welcome to the Girl Means Business podcast. I'm going to say your name wrong again. I'm so sorry.
Ludovica. Hello, everyone.
Ludovica. I'm so sorry. Okay. Welcome, Ludovica, to the Girl Means Business podcast. I'm so excited to chat with you today. I know our topic we're going to be covering is something a lot of women feel and experience and can relate to. But before we get into our topic, please tell us a little bit about yourself, about your story, your business, and what it is that you do.
Okay, so my name is Ludovica, but you can call me Ludo as well if you want. So that's going to be easier. So I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist and a confidence coach. I have studied in London for many years. I also started my career there in the National Health Service. So I started my career in mental health. And then I decided that, when it comes to, I love psychotherapy. It's like everything for me. I really like working with clients, but in psychotherapy, we often focus on the bad things, and we know what we need to move away from. We know the anxiety, the negative thoughts, the unhelpful coping. There is so much focus on that, but we don't talk that much about what we can move towards too. So our ideal self, our authentic self, our values. So I thought that would be nice to give my career a bit of a twist and start focusing more on women and confidence. I'm a huge supporter of, obviously I'm a feminist. There's no need to specify that. But I really love supporting women in their careers and their relationships. And the main thing that I'm focusing on at the moment is teaching women how to break free from people pleasing so they can become more in touch with their authentic selves. So yes, I offer one-to-one coaching. I also offer a course on confident communication because that's such a big issue when it comes to people pleasing. And so I see so many women today suffering with imposter syndrome. It's a bit of a it almost feels like it's a bit of a trend nowadays to talk about it. So I feel we should raise the awareness also about not just about what it means, but also why we see
Yeah.
so many women suffering with it.
I could not agree with this more. Like I love that women are talking about it more. I think it is definitely bringing it to the forefront so that we don't feel so alone in these feelings. Because I think for a long time, women have felt like, oh, I'm the only one that feels this way, or, oh, I should be ashamed that I feel this way. And so talking about it more and putting it out there and the work that you're doing to help women overcome it, I think is so incredible. And I'm really excited to get into that today. I will say that for me personally, I have been a people pleaser most of my life. I am working on it. As I get older, I'm starting to kind of work through overcoming my need to feel like I need to make everybody else or be responsible for everybody else's feelings or emotions or how they perceive things that I say or do. And I think that's really, really difficult. And so there's a lot of women out there listening who I think can, relate that they feel the same way. One of the things that I loved when I was like reading about you and learning about you was you wrote an article and you were talking about sort of the 5 different like archetypes that go along with imposter syndrome or people pleasing. And I would love to get into that because that is something I never really thought about. I just kind of was like, oh, I feel this way. I feel like I'm not good enough, or I feel like I need to be doing X, Y, or Z for the wrong reason. But it never occurred to me that there was maybe different underlying themes behind why each of us feel that way. And then it's not the same for all of us. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So we understand imposter syndrome as a persistent fear of being quote unquote found out. Like we are not good enough and our achievements are not important. We minimize them. We kind of ignore them, right? So we don't think we don't think we deserve praise for what we do and for who we are. And usually high achievers and perfectionists feel it the most. And we know that perfectionism it's a big problem, but we know that perfectionists have lots of rules about how they should behave and how they should be in life, in work, even in the family. So imposter syndrome is not something that happens only in the workplace. Mm-hmm. It can also happen when it comes to being a mom, for example. I'm not a good mom. People will find out I'm not a good mom, etc. So depending on the most prevalent rules that you have or that let's say your brain created around how you should or should not behave, we can divide imposter syndrome archetypes in 5 different categories. And this has been actually it's a proposal that the Dr. Valerie Young did. So she divided imposter syndromes in 5 different types. So the first one is, no surprise, the perfectionist. So the perfectionist has the rule that everything needs to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And again, it can involve the career, it can involve the housework, even can involve in the relationships that they have within the family. The superwoman / superman, because also men suffer with imposter syndrome, follow the rule, I need to be the most hardworking person in the room. So people who overwork themselves, people who are burnt out from work, who work overtime, unpaid, people who struggle with taking breaks and feel guilty for resting. Usually these are people who have, this rule. Then there is the expert. The expert follows the rule, I need to know everything. I need to be the most knowledgeable person in the room. And I coached CEOs, I coached directors, people running up for partners in big financial companies in London. They all have imposter syndrome. And usually they have this one is quite prevalent. I need to know everything. So they feel like there's always a gap in their knowledge that they need to cover somehow. Then there is the soloist. So the soloist thinks they need to be able to do everything on their own. So they struggle to ask for help. They struggle delegating. That seems to be the biggest problem. They might struggle with other areas as well, but the fact that they associate doing everything on their own with being competent, that's the biggest issue, because obviously they feel less competent, less intelligent, less hardworking, even if they are asking for help. And then there's the natural genius. The natural genius is my favorite because I have a friend who is definitely a natural genius. She's good at everything she does. Like, these people are gifted. They are intelligent. They adapt easily to situations, and they find like everything comes easy to them. And that has a drawback though, because some things will not come easy to you at some point in life. That doesn't mean you're bad. That doesn't mean you're a failure, right? And that tends to be the assumption.
Yeah.
Everything must come easily to me. And if it doesn't, it means I don't have a talent for it. So,
yeah. So, okay. So listening to that, hopefully the listeners kind of has identified something maybe where they fall into. Quick question. Is it possible, or have you seen that someone could have like an overlap of some of them? Like maybe they have like the soloist, but also they feel like they need to know everything. Like, can you have more than one?
Definitely, yes. Most times people will have more than one. I was actually just talking to a client a minute ago, and she's a people pleaser. And we made a list of the rules. She had rules like, I need to help everyone, I need to be liked by everyone, I need to manage other people's emotions, I need to avoid conflicts. Like, so you have already 4 big rules. But when I asked her, which one do you think is the strongest one, is the most impactful, is the one that really drives most of your behaviors, and she immediately said, I need to manage other people's emotions. So that was the prevalent one. Obviously, the belief system is layered. You will never find just one belief. That's not possible. You will always have more than one. But there is certainly one hot belief, let's say it, that has more impact on you, and that you feel that it's harder, it might be harder even to challenge.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to kind of break down what you just said, because I think this is a good maybe exercise, and you can kind of walk us through this of, if someone is struggling with this idea of imposter syndrome and people pleasing, and they're like, there's things going on, these rules, like you said, that I kind of live my life by, and I know they're not really serving me and the tasks, the things I want to accomplish, whether it's, like you said, business or being a good mom, or even in your, relationships and friendships and things like that. So you mentioned that you had her kind of make a list of these rules. So is that like a good starting point if someone's trying to kind of identify, like, okay, I have all these things, like I'm listening to you go through the 5 kind of types, the 5 rules, and I'm like, I have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And like, I'll give an example for me personally. I have like the one where you talk about like, it kind of everything comes naturally. Like, I've always been straight A student. School was easy for me. It was not something I struggled with. And then even in my career, like before the businesses I was running when I was a teacher, like everything felt very natural and easy. And that helped me believe that like I'm in the right place, I'm in the right path. And then when I stepped into this role of, well, mom for one, because who knows what we're doing when it comes to parenting, and then and then the business owner role, these ideas of like, okay, well, this should also come naturally, this should also feel like I know what I'm doing. And so to go into it going, well, I really don't know what I'm doing and I'm going to make mistakes, that was hard for me, and it's still hard for me, and that gives me a lot of imposter syndrome. But on top of that, I also have this idea of like, well, I should know all the things, because if I'm the teacher, if I'm the educator, if I'm the quote unquote expert, I should know all the things. So how do we start sort of, I guess, prioritizing what it is that's like our hot button thing, and then how do we work through those lists?
Okay, so making a list of the rules that you think you have, it's certainly a good point. So today we mentioned a few, and I'm sure that some of the listeners were like, oh, I have that, I have that. So making a list, certainly it's helpful. It might not be the easiest thing to do it on your own. That's the thing. Some of the rules that we have, we are very aware, like I have clients telling me all the time, I'm aware that I need to fix things for people all the time. So that they know that. And usually when it comes to that, it's also the more, when it comes to these cases, it's also the most impactful rule because you're aware of it. So you know it impacts on your behavior. So starting to identify the rules, number one thing. Second thing, you can rate your rules from 0 to 100 in terms of how strong they are.
Okay.
How much you believe in them. So 100 being, I believe in it completely. So once you make a list and you start rating these rules, then you will know that there's one rule that sticks, that kind of is the most impactful, and you will see, you will understand, okay, that one probably needs some work. Now, where does that rule come from? Is the first thing that we want to see. It's not necessary all the time to go back and see, the root cause. It's very helpful, but you can start changing the rule even if you are not sure where it comes from. Because the third thing that you can do is start analyzing the pros and cons of that. Okay, so clearly there are a lot of pros, because otherwise you wouldn't have it. But there are a lot of disadvantages of having that rule, and you need to leverage on those. Because when you will go and create a more balanced rule, you need lots of motivation to do that. But we want to do it gradually. Like, so for example, if I had the rule, okay, if I had your rule, everything must come easily and perfectly to me. Otherwise, I'm not good enough or I'm a failure. Okay, let's focus on the first part. Then that specific rule comes with certain advantages, because in life you were able to do many things. Okay, so it pushed you towards bettering yourself. And a disadvantage could be imposter syndrome, for example. So you want to create a more balanced rule by starting to change your behavior and do the opposite things that you usually do, because you want to look at the evidence that you are not looking at right now. So this rule probably pushes you to do certain things and to not do other things. For example, you may avoid certain things because you think that if you're not perfect, then it means that you cannot learn or you're a failure, right? So I had a client the other day who was like, oh, I got myself a guitar. I started playing a guitar one day and then I stopped playing, although I love music and it's my passion and I really wanted it, but I started thinking, this is not, like, it's not easy for me. It shouldn't be that hard, right? Yeah. It should come more natural. It should be more of a talent. But it's not like that, because obviously these are skills that you can practice. So he stopped playing guitar. So one of the experiments could be, okay, let's go and grab that guitar. Let's see if you can actually build your skills, or if you are really that bad at playing a guitar. It's possible, but you don't know. You are blocking yourself. You are limiting yourself when you follow your rule all the time.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned the pros and the cons, because I think a lot of times we are under the assumption that these are all negative things. Again, using my example of things have always come easy. And so I'm like, oh, well, maybe it shouldn't, this is a negative thing. I need to fix this, I need to correct this. When really there are a lot of pros. Like, one of those pros, and my oldest daughter is a mini version of me. So I'm learning a lot by watching her navigate all of this. And the things that I say to her are a lot of times things I'm also needing to say to myself. And a perfect example is she has always been very naturally athletic, and any sport that she plays or activity, she just picks it up very naturally and quickly. And it has allowed her to feel confident going into scenarios and trying new things that she maybe normally wouldn't, would have been hesitant in the past, or would have, without that kind of confidence of everything has come easily to this point, I should be able to do this easily as well. And the same with me is, like, I think there have been things I have stepped into that I would have probably second guessed or hesitated to do if it wasn't for, I had a little bit of this confidence of like, oh, I've been able to do these things easily in the past, so this should come easily too. And so I think that's really important to look at not only the negative of this, but what are some of the benefits you have of having these rules and having these thoughts and feelings, because there's obviously pros and cons too, like you said. And then going into like the more of the cons, I guess, is, yeah, there are going to be times when you step into something that is new and different, but you pushed yourself to do that. Now, like the guitar thing, like now you've got to actually put in the work. And again, my daughter's learning this too with athletics and sports, is she's naturally gifted at the beginning, but then when it comes to like actually refining those skills and taking it to the next level, she has to put in the work, and she's got to spend the hours practicing and doing the extra things. And so I think that that's really good to recognize a little bit of both. So how can we, let's say that there's a listener and she's like, okay, I know kind of my top rule that it has its pros, but it also has its probably biggest cons. It's stopping me from doing X, Y, or Z. How can we kind of move past that and embrace more of the positive side of it?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
If you've been listening to the Girl Means Business podcast for any amount of time, then you know my love of email marketing runs deep. Not only is it a great way to generate new leads, but it's one of the most effective methods for nurturing warm leads and turning them into sales. Now, over the years, I've tested several email platforms, and my favorite by far is Flowdesk. Not only do they make email marketing simple and easy, even for the technically challenged, but they have everything you need to create stunning emails, capture leads, make sales, and automate the entire process, giving you time back in your busy day. And the cherry on top is you're only charged one flat fee no matter how many subscribers you have. So while other platforms will increase your price when you go over your pricing tier limit, Flowdesk has no price increases or hidden fees. If you're ready to give Flowdesk a try, click the link below in the show notes to save 50% off your first year. Let Flowdesk help you design emails people will love. Click the link below and check it out. I have a feeling you're going to love it just as much as I do.
So one of the rules that maybe we can talk about is I need to be perfect all the time, because it seems quite, a rule that quite a few people could have. This is a rule that has lots of advantages, unfortunately, because first of all, perfectionism is socially condoned. We can say that, it's society happy if you're a perfectionist, if you're burning out, and if you're super stressed. Like it almost seems like this is the new normal now. It actually helps you to avoid objective failure, like we were saying before. If you don't do the things that you don't do well, then you'd never fail. Also, you never learn, but certainly you never fail. So that's a big pro, because people never feel like, I'm not that good at that. I should be improving myself. And there is a difference between self-reflection and self-criticism, by the way. And so these two are too often confused as being the same thing. So you can be reflective and realize, oh, maybe I need some improvement on that. But you don't necessarily need to beat yourself up, because that's not going to be good anyway. Another advantage of perfectionism is that, you fall into the good girl category, right? Yeah. So everyone likes that. Everyone seems to be quite happy if they see someone striving for success continuously. But obviously that comes with a lot of disadvantages, because in the striving to achieve the standard, you start suffering with anxiety and stress. And when you achieve the standard, it's all good. The problem is that it's just a matter of time before you find another standard that it's higher than the other one,
You keep moving the bar further and further. Yeah.
What's perfection then? So we start asking ourselves the question, that's an idea, perfection. It's not a thing, right? So what is it? And it changes all the time. That's the problem. And then when you don't achieve the standard, then self-criticism kicks in. So you move between being anxious and being feeling low, feeling bad about yourself. So there is this going up and down, there's this almost like a pendulum moving between these two things. And actually, perfectionists are high achievers. That's another advantage, they do achieve a lot, because objectively they do work really hard, but what's the price? That's what we need to ask ourselves. When we look for the disadvantages, it's what is the price? At what cost this is all happening? And can I be good, but more relaxed? Because also there's that question, you know, do I need to be stressed all the time to achieve things?
Yeah. So how do we move past, or how do we work through recognizing like the perfectionism, like recognizing that, you know, the stress and the anxiety is not worth what, you know, the result is. So how can we sort of overcome that feeling of like, oh, like I'll just use a really easy example. Let's say when it comes to putting content out for your business. I know a lot of people who are like, well, I can't post that yet, or I can't put that out into the world yet because it's not perfect yet. It's not completely exactly every T is crossed, every I is dotted, every this, every that. And then they end up just kind of pushing things down the road, and then nothing ever actually gets accomplished. So how do we, one, you said we you know, recognizing it, seeing it for what it is, kind of rating it as like, this is where it falls in 1 to 100 of like how much this is impacting me. But then what are some things we can do that can help us to move past that and actually start putting things out into the world, even if they aren't perfect, or, you know, whatever the other rules, you know, are, that moving past the negative parts of it?
So when we start, you know, identifying the rules, then rating the rules, then looking for pros and cons, and then we have a bit more of a clearer picture. Okay, because before it wasn't clear. Now it's clearer. We know the pros and cons. We know where it comes from. So we know that it's probably a pattern. We know it's probably a habit. We need to understand that patterns and habits again, we cannot break them overnight. So we need a systematic method. So what we usually do is we build another list, which is a hierarchy really. So it can be a 10-item hierarchy, for example, of all experiments that we can do that go against our rule. So is the rule I need to be perfect all the time? Okay. So we build a list of 10 items of experiments that will go against that rule. So can I do something imperfectly today? And see what happens. Okay, so we will build the confidence, we will build also the tolerance to uncertainty and the tolerance to whatever negative emotion might come up. Obviously, we start with very easy situations because that's what we want to do. We don't want to do, you know, anything crazy. We don't want to scare people away. But initially, anything that causes a little bit of discomfort is good.
Okay.
And again, you can rate yourself. You can ask yourself, okay, so let's say I want to write an email with a typo, for example. How much anxiety does that cause you from 0 to 10 in thinking, even just thinking about that? Maybe a 4. Okay, and anything between 3 and 4 is good as a first experiment. Anything above 5 is not good as a first experiment. It's too anxiety provoking. But we can get there because the more you start doing these things, the more you start realizing nothing happens. People don't think bad things of you. No one is actually thinking about your typo. Most times typos are not even noticed anyway. And you start becoming more confident in the idea of that you can manage difficult situations. And that's what real confidence is. It's not, you're not confident when you're good at something. You're confident when you believe in yourself despite being not good at something. Okay.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Because I think that's something we confuse. I think a lot of people believe that confidence is being good at something. You know, it's like, oh, I've achieved confidence because I have achieved success in this thing. When I like the way you put it, like the confidence is the ability to know that like you're still good, even if it doesn't work out the way that you thought it would, or you failed a little bit, or, you know, that's really interesting. Because I think that's a big piece of it. When you talk about people pleasing and imposter syndrome, it's a lot of it comes back to confidence. And I think that's a key piece that, you know, we have to work on, like you said, building those little building blocks that eventually add up to the bigger thing. But starting small in those places.
Yeah, starting small, definitely. And then you can step up, in your hierarchy, and try to do more complex, more difficult challenges. But before stepping up, you should feel confident in the next step. So let's say you want to move to step 2. Okay, what's step 2? Maybe I can go to work with I don't know, with something I usually don't wear. For example, I can go to a meeting with a red shirt. Okay, so that can be something, because usually, I want to look all professional and like basic. But that day I decide I want to wear a red shirt. I don't know. That's the first example I came to. How anxiety provoking does that feel for you? Maybe a 5. I don't know what people think of me. Everyone is very looking corporate in my job. So, what are they gonna think, etc. Okay, when you did the first experiment, and that was a 3 or a 4 in terms of anxiety rating, and it came down to a 3 because you did it repeatedly, and then you build the confidence that you can handle the anxiety and everything that comes with it, then you can move to step 2. Because step 2, it's a 5, but it will go down to a 4, to a 3, to a 2. And when it does that, then you can move to step 3. That's how you build the tolerance, basically, because the idea is that I think sometimes we think we cannot cope with certain situations, so we don't put ourselves out there. But then when we do put ourselves out there and we realize, oh, I can cope with this, suddenly it's not too bad. But if you didn't do it, you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah. The baby steps, little things add up to bigger accomplishments further down. And I like the idea that the more you do it, the anxiety level drops, because I think that a lot of times we think like, oh no, it's just, I'm always going to be at a 5 for this. I'm just learning to like deal with it. But really we're learning to minimize it so that it's not a 5 anymore, which is really helpful. Yeah. So I want to talk about people pleasing in particular, because I think that for a lot of people, especially those of us that are in like a service-based business, or even just in our lives in general, the people pleasing aspect transcends kind of everything, because it's almost like we're putting other people's, we're putting other people's needs kind of in front of ours, because we're saying like, my client being satisfied and happy or getting their way is more important than me having my boundaries in my business, or this friend having, their way is more important than me having these boundaries. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about what people pleasing really is at its core, and then how we can maybe move past that. Because I do think that that's something that's not just specific to business, it's our whole life in general.
Yes. So people pleasing is the tendency to prioritize other people over your own. And that's not just what other people say, want, or need, is everything about others. So it's a self-sacrificing pattern, basically. You can also call it, it's a form of self-abandonment, because the more you focus on other people, as time passes, you forget about yourself. And you unlearn about yourself. You don't know who you are anymore. You don't know what you want anymore. You don't know what you need anymore. And that is the main problem, is that people pleasers identify with the idea of being people pleasers. They don't feel like it's a behavior, that it's something that I do that probably, is just a random behavior that I should change. No, they say I am a people pleaser.
Yeah.
And so we need to start discerning the person from the social mask, because that is a social mask. If you were alone on an island, you wouldn't have people pleasing. So that's a social mask.
Interesting.
And
okay.
Yeah. So you want to be seen and perceived in a certain way. Usually you want to be liked. Usually you want to be embraced. Usually you want to be accepted. And so you do anything you can to be loved by other people. If that means fixing things for other people, you will. If that means helping other people, you will. If that means not saying your opinion because otherwise might cause some confrontation or conflict, you will. And that you will lose sight of yourself over time.
Okay. I love that. I had never thought of it in the form of like a social mask, or even, I love what you said about people pleasing as self-abandonment. Like that is really like powerful, because like you said, we kind of just think like, oh, I just want to make everybody happy. And I just, it's almost like a badge of honor a little bit of like, oh, I'm self-sacrificing. I'm willing to do things for others. And that becomes, like you said, kind of an identity piece of like, oh, look how good I am. Look how, kind I am. Look how generous I am because I'm doing all these things, when really at the core of it, it is us letting go of ourselves. That's really like, that hit hard for me. I was like, oh, wow, that's powerful. So I know that a big piece of like the people pleasing and moving beyond that and trying to kind of correct that is doing more things that are, I don't want to say like self-centered, but focusing on the self. For a lot of people, that can feel very self-centered. It can feel like we're being almost too like, I don't want to ruffle feathers. I don't want to I don't want to cause problems. I don't want to do all the things, but yet that's kind of what we need. So how do you get a balance of like, I'm still going to be mindful of others and their needs, but I'm also going to protect my needs and what I want and who I am?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, photographers, are you ready to make 2024 your best year yet? Growing a business is tough. You're following all the successful photographers and experts, soaking up their best advice and downloading all their free guides, trying to replicate their success only to come up lacking, blaming yourself when their methods don't work for you. But the truth is, it isn't you. Free content and one-size-fits-all courses can only get you so far. What you need is personalized help and guidance, but that can get expensive. Well, not anymore. I've created the perfect solution to get you personalized results for less than $2 a day. Introducing the Focus Photographer Lab, a one-of-a-kind coaching membership that gets you one-on-one results for a fraction of the cost of traditional coaching. Inside the lab, you'll find the 3 C's to success: classes, coaching, and community. With classes, you gain access to a treasure trove of pre-recorded trainings and invaluable resources. With coaching, you get monthly live trainings and Q&A sessions, along with my favorite part, the weekly one-on-one office hours, where we get to address your unique questions and challenges. And then there's the community, where you get to connect with an amazing group of talented female photographers who share your passion, supporting each other and inspiring each other to greatness. The best part is it doesn't come with an expensive one-on-one coaching price tag. You get all of that for just $47 a month. You can even try it for free for 14 days to make sure it's a good fit for you. And there is no contract and no obligation. You can cancel at any time. So what are you waiting for? Head down to the show notes and click the link to learn more and get signed up today. And let's make 2024 our best year yet.
So that's why there is a big part of my program that focuses on assertiveness. And when we talk about assertiveness, often people feel like that's related to communication and setting boundaries only, but actually assertiveness is about your right to exist as a person.
Oh, wow.
If you don't have if you're not assertive, you are either passive or aggressive. Okay. If you're on the passive side, you follow the rule that other people are okay and you are not. So other people can say, do whatever they want. You need to adapt, you need to be agreeable, etc. If you're on the aggressive side, which people pleasers don't go there often, but sometimes they do, because anger is something we all feel and it builds up if you don't express it. And when it will build up, sometimes people pleasers can jump from being passive to the other end of the continuum and be aggressive, just very reactive, because they cannot take it anymore. And the aggressive style says, I am more important than you. I am okay. You are not okay in this moment. You need to listen to me. So they scream, they shout, they want to be heard, they impose themselves. The assertive style, it's in the middle, and it says, I am okay and you are okay. So I have the right to voice my opinion. You have the right to voice your opinion. I can say something, you cannot agree with that. I can set a boundary, you can say that you don't like it.
Okay.
So we can negotiate. And then it becomes, we are on the same level. It becomes an adult to adult conversation. It's not a child to parent conversation where one tries to adapt to the other all the time. It's a situation in which you want to honor the other person's needs, you want to respect the other person's, but also you want to respect yourself, because the problem with people pleasing is that we forget kindness is also self-kindness. We forget that compassion is also self-compassion. You haven't fully developed empathy if you cannot manage empathy. Empathy with no boundaries, it's a disaster potentially, because you're going to feel everything. You're going to feel all other people's emotions, and then you need to step in all the time and manage it for them. So other people are important, of course, and you are also. So it's not but you are also, it's and you are. So it's a coexistence.
That's great, because I think there is a lot of that idea that it's either black or white. It's either you're on this side of the scale or you're on this side of the scale. But that idea of the middle ground, that gray area of assertiveness, is really key there. And we talked about before, like these little steps you can do to kind of come out of these imposter syndrome or these different rules that we have. What are some of the little steps people can take when it comes to people pleasing? If there's someone who is like always the yes person, like I'm gonna, yes, I'm gonna agree to whatever you say. Even when it comes down to things like where we go eat dinner, or bigger things where it's a client asking for something that's outside of your scope of what you do. What are little ways we can kind of build up to that middle gray ground of being assertive and standing up for ourselves?
So with people pleasers, I think there is another difficulty, because when it comes to imposter syndrome, you know more or less how you want to be. You want to be more confident, you want to be more self-assured. When it comes to people pleasing, you know what you're moving away from, but you don't necessarily know what you're moving towards, because you don't fully know yourself. So that is always the first step. What are your needs? And that's usually a question that when I ask my clients what their needs are, they're like, I don't know. I spend so much time focusing on other people's needs. I have no idea. So what do you need? What do you need in your relationship? What do you need in your job? What do you need from your coworkers, from your friends? That's first step. Build an internal compass. An internal compass is also made of your values. What do you value out of life? I had a client who was basically had an altercation with her father, because she already had a child, a daughter, but her father wanted her to have another one. And she was really focused on her career. So she had no intention. She wasn't planning to have another child. And so she was valuing her independence, her career in that moment. But one of her values is independence. And so he was kind of overpowering her in that moment. And she was almost giving in when she realized, this is my value. I value my independence. This is going completely against who I am. Because there is often a lack of knowledge about who they are as people, not as people pleasers, just people. Just take the first part of the sentence. Okay. What do you value? What do you need? The first things to identify. And then you can start setting some boundaries, because otherwise you don't really know what you're doing. Yeah, I said no to a friend earlier who asked for my help. So I'm trying to that's great. But what are you moving towards? Because here you can, what we were talking about before, the hierarchy, the list of behaviors, it needs to be repeated. You can't just say no once and then expect to feel better about yourself. It needs to be repeated. Look how many times you said yes when you meant no. Okay, so it needs to be, I don't want to say the same, but if you're a people pleaser, probably you had many years of that. And so now you need to restructure your belief system completely and show up in the world as a different person. So that requires you actively changing your behavior and exposing yourself to this new idea of who you are, new identity, and it needs to happen often, frequent. It needs to be frequent.
Wow. That's oh my gosh. Like I'm having so many moments of just like, okay, I need to do this. I need to do that, because what you were saying, and it kind of like the underlying theme of everything we talked about today is knowing yourself. You have to know yourself so well in order to do any of the work that we've talked about, as far as like becoming a, recovering from people pleasing or moving past these different imposter syndrome feelings you're having. It all comes back to you. And I think that there's a movement now towards, especially younger people, starting off with more of that knowledge of who am I, and what do I stand for, and what are my feelings. But for those of us that are in older generations, I'm 42, like we weren't taught to look inward. And so it's almost like rewriting everything that we've kind of known, is to go back and go, okay, no, I need to look inwards. I need to figure out who I am and what I stand for and what I want and what I need from people and from myself and from these different situations. And then taking those little steps. And I know I had a thought when you were talking, an example of the other night, my youngest daughter had a school program. We were done. We were going to pick up my other daughter at her tennis lesson. And in between, I was like, well, do y'all want to like grab some dinner? And my go-to, they were like, yeah, let's have dinner. I was like, okay, well, what does everybody want? And what typically happens is they say what they want and we go do that, even though it's not what I would want. And I was like, no, in that moment, I can say, hey, I really, I'm trying to eat healthier. Can we go to this place or this place where they have options where I can find something that fits into my diet, as opposed to just going like, well, what do y'all want to do? Because I don't want to deal with somebody complaining about they don't like this, or, oh, this daughter didn't get this or whatever. Even the little things of like, my health is a priority. I need to stand up for that. And then I think when, obviously business related, it's like, these are the boundaries. These are the things that I stand for. These are the things that I am willing to do. Anything beyond that, I need to have a firm, like no, or a no, however, I can, do X, Y, or Z, so that you don't feel like you're being so harsh. But wow, that was a big, like, I feel like I've just been through a therapy session. I love it.
Well, believe it or not, one of the first experiments I did with a client was to decide what she wanted for dinner, because she had this habit of just going with whatever the rest of the family wanted. So that's such a common thing.
Yeah. Well, it's like that movie with Julia Roberts, Runaway Bride. I love the scene in that movie where she's figuring out what kind of eggs that she likes to eat, because she's always just ordered whatever the person that she's been dating or engaged to has always ordered. And I think that came to mind when we were talking about this. I was like, yeah, like if we spend so much time focused on what does our significant other like or want to do, or what is our friend or our parent or, whoever, our coworkers or our clients, then yeah, it's always about somebody else and it's never about us. And that's okay. It doesn't mean you're selfish. It just means that you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah, but also people around you need you to take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like your daughters do need you to take care of yourself, for example, right?
Yeah.
And you're happier and stronger and better if you take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So is it selfish, or is just what, the natural state of a human being? We should take care of ourselves and others. And these are the two biggest needs of human beings: taking care of others and self-actualization. So that's, we can't have one without having the other.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, this has been incredibly powerful and so helpful. And I'm very appreciative that you shared your wisdom and your insight with us. I know there's so much more that goes into what you do to help people. So let everybody know where they can find you online, where they can go if they are like, I need this person in my life to help me. How can they work with you? What are all the ways they can get in touch with you?
Well, I have a website. Maybe I can just give it to you because it's a bit yes. Okay. So I can give it to you. And then I have an Instagram page, which is my name, Ludovica, _Colella _coaching. And they can just contact me via Instagram. On my website, there is a form to apply to work with me. So the information is all out there.
Perfect. Yeah. And I will have your website and your Instagram linked in the show notes so they can easily go and grab that. But thank you so much for your time. This has been incredible. I know everybody listening is going to take some amazing takeaways from this. So it's been well worth the time and your energy. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in this week. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love for you to take a screenshot, share it to social media, and don't forget to tag Girl Means Business. And as always, we greatly appreciate any reviews you leave for this podcast. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next week.